Women are underrepresented in terms of leadership in policing, it is now time to ask the question, what would policing look like with more women at the helm, including women of color? Zeta Omega is the lead sponsor of this event, and we are so happy to welcome our co-sponsors who have invited their members and reached out to the community to amplify this evening's event. They are the Greater Washington Area Chapter of the National Bar Association, Women Lawyers Division, the Junior League of Prince George's County, the Mu Lambda Chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and the Omicron Lambda Alpha Chapter, of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. We are partnered and linked up in the fight with women, men, associations, and groups that are similarly committed to serving all mankind. I'd like to thank our guest panelists today, Acting Chief of the United States Capitol Police and member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Yogananda Pittman, and Commander of the 1st District of Metropolitan Police Department, Commander Morgan Kane, our moderator, Ganesha Martin, Esquire, our event chair, Danielle Turnipseed, our Connection Committee Chairman, Takima Keys, and the entire planning committee for this important discussion. Without further ado, I'm happy to transition the program to Danielle Turnipseed, who will introduce our moderator. Take care and be well.
Thank you. It is my honor and privilege to be a member of the Zeta Omega Chapter Connection Committee that, again, is led by Takima Keys. We have been focused on voter engagement, voter registration, hosted forums, met with candidates, and participated in legislative days in Maryland and Washington, D.C. The committee wishes to engage the community on the most important social and civic issues, so we are so pleased to host this event tonight. I'd like to take a minute to introduce Ms. Ganesha Martin, who will serve as our moderator for this evening. Ganesha Martin is a police reform expert who recently joined Mark 43, the leading cloud-native public safety software company, as Vice President of Public Policy and Community Affairs. In her role, Martin focuses on Mark 43's ongoing commitment to innovation in technology designed to empower police to better serve their communities through accountability, transparency, and trust building. Prior to this role, she served in several positions in Baltimore city government, most recently as director of the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice. She has overseen collaborative criminal justice efforts that included the Baltimore Police Department, the Baltimore State's Attorney's Office, the Governor's Office of Crime Control and Prevention, the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, U.S. Attorney's Office, the Judiciary, and several community groups. Martin is a lawyer who led the federal ordered consent decree reforms efforts at the Baltimore Police Department from 2015 to 2018 as Chief of the Department of Justice Compliance, Accountability, and External Affairs Division. She played an integral role in on a negotiation team that introduced structural reforms to the Baltimore Police Department in the areas of crisis intervention, relationships with youth, interactions with persons suffering from mental illness, the use of force, interactions with body-worn cameras, de-escalation, mobile data computer technology, hiring and recruitment, community engagement, and officer wellness and early intervention. Martin is an ambassador who seeks non-traditional relationships to better serve all public safety stakeholders. She has led police reform efforts around the country and currently leads the Impact campaign for the documentary Charm City. In her current consulting practice, Martin focuses on uniting communities of color and the police who swear to serve and protect them. She's a member of the Council on Criminal Justice, an invite-only, nonpartisan organization and think tank for leaders in the criminal justice field. She was recently elected to the board of directors for the National Criminal Justice Association, and in 2019, she was one of 40 community policing experts invited to Nairobi, Kenya, to share community policing strategies during the convening on civilian police reform by Open Societies Foundation. She was also awarded their Securing Open Societies Fellowship in 2019. Martin's expert commentary has been featured in the New York Times, the Baltimore Sun, the USA Today, and the Washington Post, among others. A co-founder of Educated Exposure Foundation, a board member of Year Up Baltimore, Teach for America, Outward Bound, Baltimore Community Mediation Center, and Overcoming Poverty Together. Martin's philanthropic endeavors reflect her commitment to advance social justice issues that directly impact the quality of life for historically underserved communities. She has been recognized in recent years by the Baltimore Sun in its top 25 women to watch, the Daily Record in its top 100 women, and the International Association Chiefs of Police in its top 40 under 40 list. I'll close by saying, in addition to all that's been said, she is a friend. She is absolutely committed to everything that I've read, and this is more than a job for her, it's a vocation. It's my honor and privilege to call her a sister, and I'd like to turn the program over to Ganesha Martin.
Thank you, Danielle. And it's probably because of our sisterhood that you ignored my advice to cut out a lot of my bio and went ahead and read all of that. I said, cut out the stuff that's not important. So I love you for that. I love you for your commitment to our communities, to all of the organizations, especially this one, and all the hard work that you put into it. And you guys jumped right at this opportunity to, we need to support our sisters in all vocations, but especially right now for this conversation. So I appreciate that. I am going to introduce our panelists, and then I am going to tell you a little bit about the film. We're going to watch a trailer for those of you all who did not have time to watch the film, so you can get a taste of what the film is about. I'm going to ask some questions, and then we're going to leave questions or time for questions at the end. You can always feel free to throw things in the chat, have a conversation, and if there's things that I'm talking about, I may just add that into the conversation as we move forward. And I'm just blessed and glad to see all your beautiful faces here with us tonight. So I am going to start off with Chief Pittman. Acting Chief Pittman was designated as Acting Chief of Police on January 8th, 2021 by Capitol Police Board 2104. Prior to this appointment, she had been serving as Assistant Chief for the Protective and Intelligence Operations since 2019. In that role, she was responsible for all operations concerning the safety and security of the U.S. Capitol, members of Congress, staff, and visitors, to include threat detection and prevention, as well as the physical security systems throughout the Capitol complex. Prior to her promotion to Assistant Chief, she was named Deputy Chief and Bureau Commander for the Command and Coordination Bureau in June 2018. In that role, she was responsible for the supervision and personnel and the management of key operations within the department, including the Command Center, communications and dispatch, court liaison, report processing, emergency planning, and special events. Acting Chief Pittman joined the USCP and entered the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center Academy in Glencoe, Georgia, graduating September 2001. Her USCP assignment was in the Senate Division, where she provided security and protective details for US senators and visiting dignitaries. In 2006, she was promoted to the rank of sergeant and was assigned to the department's communications division. In January 2010, she was promoted to lieutenant and was assigned to the House Division, where she supervised 142 officers, 10 supervisors, and several civilian employees. In 2012, Acting Chief Pittman was one of the first African-American female supervisors to attain the rank of captain. While serving as captain, she was assigned to the Capitol Division, where she supervised more than 400 officers and civilians and led the efforts to provide the security footprint for the 2013 presidential inauguration. Captain Pittman served as the sworn personnel lead representative negotiator during the department's 2013 contract negotiations with the Teamsters. In December 2015, Acting Chief Pittman was promoted to inspector and was assigned to the Office of Accountability and Improvement, where she was the Chief of Police's designee in responding to all of the department's civilian and sworn disciplinary appeals and grievances. A native of Cambridge, Maryland, Acting Chief graduated from Morgan State University. I know we have some representatives on here, with a Bachelor of Science degree in psychology in 1999. She earned her master's degree in public administration from Marist College and in 2019, and she is currently working towards her PhD as if she didn't have anything else to do in public administration. Okay, Commander Morgan Kane currently serves as the commander of the 1st District of MPD, located in the lower central portion of DC. The 1st District is home to the city's business and political center. Ladies, these are all the ladies that keep it straight out there, okay, for us. It includes some of our nation's most recognized and cherished landmarks, as well as some of the city's most interesting and diverse neighborhoods. She was appointed as the commander of the 1st District in August 2016. Commander Kane joined MPD in December 1998 and began her career as a patrol officer in the 1st District, following her training at the Metropolitan Police Academy. She was promoted to sergeant in 2004. 3 short years later, in 2007, Commander Kane made lieutenant. In 2012, she was promoted to captain and became an inspector in 2014, climbing those ranks in record speed. During her 19-year career with MPD, Commander Kane has worked in a variety of posts. In addition to patrol work as an officer, sergeant, and captain, Commander Kane has also been assigned to the Office of Organizational Development, the Office of Homeland Security and Counterterrorism, and Executive Office of the Chief of Police. She has received numerous awards throughout her career, including achievement medals, commanding officer commendations, and the PSA Officer of the Year. She was awarded the Employee of the Year for the Executive Office of the Chief of Police for 2012. Additionally, while serving as Assistant District Commander of the 5th District in 2013, she was recognized as Captain of the Year. Commander Kane holds a bachelor's degree in paralegal studies, as well as a master's degree in public administration from the University of the District of Columbia. She is a resident of the 1st District. She was appointed by Mayor Muriel Bowser and confirmed by the council May 2nd, 2017, and sworn in on May 25th, 2017. Again, we just have brilliant, wonderful women of color here representing us, representing law enforcement. And so it is an honor for you all to be here with us tonight. A little bit about the film before I show the trailer. So this documentary filmmaker actually, back, if you all remember the death of Eric Garner, she was standing near a police officer she was friends with. And when that death was reported, she said to her friend, you know, what would you have done? And she said, I would have done something completely different. I just would have said, hey, you know, let's talk about it, you know, and he would still be alive today. And so that made that documentary filmmaker, Deidre, start to explore, well, what is the difference between how women react to things and men, and in particular, Black women in communities. And so she started to explore that. She found a chief in Minneapolis who gave her full access to a police department, which is difficult to get. And so she went with that and she got full access. And as you see through the film, she's picking up on things that you normally would not see on film inside of a police department. And then she stopped filming about 2 months before the murder of George Floyd. So of course, she could not tell that story without telling a piece of his story. So she went back and put some of that context in there. And that's the film that you ended up seeing. I will tell you many times I cannot watch even this trailer without choking up and crying. It's very difficult for us to have these conversations, given, you know, our personal experience, but I'm very glad that you all are here today so we can continue to explore these issues so that we can find solutions, so that these conversations change in the future. So I have a assistant on here that's going to help me. And Danielle, if you can begin to show your screen so that we can watch the trailer for the folks who might not have been able to see the film.
They killed that boy in cold blood. Why? Because he black. Why? Because he black.
That was the first real time that I felt like I needed to choose a side, black or blue.
People want change. They want it quickly, but change is very challenging.
Do you, Janae Harteau, solemnly swear?
My goal as the police chief was creating change from within. And now every rank of this police department is held by a woman or women.
The 3rd Precinct was a place that needed culture change.
Officer-involved shootings almost always include male officers, very seldom with women.
Let's introduce Officer Wade.
It's how you interact with the person. Are we treating them with proper respect as human beings?
De-escalation has a point, but at some point, you got to take action.
It's not about white. It's not about black. It's about the police keep killing us.
I'm calling for Chief Harteau to be fired.
Madaria Arredondo is the city's first black police chief.
The chief has selected no women for his executive team. They're losing any female perspective.
Do you have a valid driver's license?
I don't.
So that's why you're nervous.
Yeah.
I know that fear. I don't want to add to the trauma.
It looks like we're a bunch of incompetents running around willingly violating people's rights.
The Hennepin County Attorney's Office has filed charges of 3rd-degree murder against Minneapolis police officer Mohammed Noor.
Black officer getting charged with shooting a white woman, and so many white officers have not been charged with shooting people of color.
Justice for one is not justice for all. Do something about it.
Do you feel embarrassed sometimes of my job? I'm supporting Black Lives Matter, but it's like I support my mom.
Thank you, Danielle. This film explores so many different issues. I fear we won't even get to half of them tonight, but let's start out with our panel and tell us why you joined the law enforcement profession. Chief, we'll start with you.
Well, good evening, everyone. And first and foremost, I just want to say thank you for allowing me the opportunity to just share some insight on what it's like to be not only a woman in law enforcement, but a Black woman in law enforcement. And there are some differences. So having a conversation with Ms. Martin yesterday, I did not grow up wanting to be a police officer. That was not what I aspired to do. Went to college at Morgan State University. I have an older brother at that time, also Morgan State University attendee. He ended up graduating from Maryland. But at that time, my brother was joining the Howard County Police. He was on Howard County Police Department and left there and went to the FBI. And when I went to his graduation, we come from a long line of family that has been committed to public service. So it was never a question of whether or not I was going to do something in the community or to help the community. That was expected and required in the household that we grew up in. My grandparents were civil rights activists. My uncle was a Tuskegee Airman. So we have a long family history and tradition of military service etc. But when he went into the FBI, he got on what was referred to back then as the hostage negotiation team. And he'd call with these stories about nights that he had. He started out in a small town in Houston. And I was like, no, brother, I don't think I'm interested in that. And caveat, it should be noted that when I came out of high school and when I was at Morgan, there was a deliberate effort by the military. I was heavily recruited by the Naval Academy, as well as coming out of Morgan. The FBI was having a push to have African-American in general, and then African-American women to bring on to their force. And when I left Cambridge, South Dorchester, the Naval Academy had just had that incident, and it's probably a lot of younger people on this call, so they may not remember, but they had handcuffed some women to toilets. And this was part of their hazing and bringing in women. And a good friend of mine, also from Cambridge, Dion's a doctor now, we were really considering going to the Naval Academy. We're all signed up, geared up, ready to go. So fast forward, got to Morgan. He went to the FBI, and I said, well, I don't know about that. I'll apply. But I also applied to Capitol Police and a couple of other agencies. Capitol called me first, and the rest has been really, truly a blessing. I love what I do. I love the people that I serve. And I'm just honored that you all would consider listening to what I have to say. It still tickles me to death, but I'm appreciative. Morgan, I consider a friend, and I've got a funny story I know Morgan wants to share, so I'll save that for a little later. I don't know if she wants me to share it, but I'm going to share it anyway. But and then I would not be forgiven if I didn't give a shout out to Kappa Theta Omega. I am a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. So thank you again for having me. But that's how I got started in federal law enforcement.
Beautiful, beautiful. It's always important. One of the things with recruitment is who calls first, and that's why we've got to be out there specifically recruiting Black women into our departments. Commander Kane, tell us, how did you become law enforcement?
Sure. Let me share that. But first of all, Chief, I hope that's a funny ha story and not like
it is, I promise.
Okay. And then my other thing is, if anybody, I would like to be a member of AKA. If anybody has, tell me how I'm supposed to do that. I would like to be a sorority. I want to ski or something. I want to do something. No, but look, so it's funny. My intention was never to go into law enforcement. Let me say that. I always thought that I would be a civil rights attorney. I thought after undergrad, I was going straight to law school, and I wanted to be a civil rights attorney. I had no exposure or no insight into law enforcement growing up. As a matter of fact, I was afraid of the police. We didn't talk to the police. I'm from upstate New York, so I'm not from down here. But we didn't talk to the police. I think there might have been one Black police officer on the police department that I grew up in Niagara Falls, and I would see my dad talk to him occasionally. But I was afraid of the police. Let me say that. As a kid, I used to have nightmares about the police. And I don't even know what bad movie I watched, to get that. But I was just always nervous that something was going to happen. And, my brothers or my dad or I would wind up in jail. And I don't even know where that came from. But as a kid, that was really something that really scared me and bothered me. So never did I think law enforcement. I thought I wanted to be a civil rights attorney. So I come down for undergrad after I graduated from high school in 1993. I came down and I went to Marymount University over in Arlington, Virginia. And that was my real big, first exposure outside of being in Niagara Falls, New York. And y'all probably, and it is more, it's a city. I know y'all think it's just the falls, it's this big pretty water, you know, that comes. No, it's a city there. So I came down to Arlington, Virginia, and I went to Marymount University. Paralegal studies. I started with as a poli-sci major, a political science major, but then after the first year, I was like, I don't know about that. Let me get ready, you know, let me go do for law school, you know, start getting some of those classes out the way. So I switched over. So I had to make up a year's worth of classes, went to summer school and stuff like that to make sure that I graduated on time. So nevertheless, during my undergraduate years is when I became exposed to law enforcement and started to think of it as not necessarily in that moment as a possible career, because I did go ahead and anyway, I was exposed to it. So I went ahead and I graduated and I got a job in the private sector. After I graduated from undergrad, that was fine, that was good, but I still wanted, someone was kind of tugging at me. I was like, I want to, you know, go into law enforcement. And so I was initially thinking, you know, a federal agency. I was thinking the FBI. And so I kind of talked to some of the recruiters, and I remember meeting this beautiful Secret Service agent. She was in recruiting. She was a Black female, and she was in recruiting for Secret Service. She told me, come down, come sit in my office. I went down and I talked to her, and we kind of talked through what my plans looked like, what I wanted to do, you know, how did I think I could get there? And so we kind of came up with this plan together. That I was going to go to a local police department, right? And I was going to do some things that would make me competitive, you know, to get into, you know, the Secret Service or the FBI. So I would do some things to make myself competitive to get in, right? So I started looking at the jurisdictions right here in the area because I knew I wasn't going back to Niagara Falls. I didn't mention that part, did I? I knew I wasn't going back up to Niagara Falls after graduation. So I started looking at the local jurisdictions. And what wound up happening was that as I looked in Virginia, Arlington, Fairfax, PG, Montgomery County, and I looked at DC. And it was like, man, if you wanted to learn something, experience something, you know, make yourself, what's the word? Competitive. DC was the place to be in 1998 was when I started. That's when I graduated. Or I graduated in 97. So 98. So I was like, so I came up with this plan. I said, I had a 5-year plan coming to MPD. I wanted to get the academic award in the academy. All right, I said, I'm gonna learn how to speak Spanish. I'm gonna get promoted to sergeant so I get some supervisory experience, and I'm gonna get my master's degree. So I got the academic award. I got my master's degree in public administration within that time frame. I got promoted to sergeant. I still can't speak Spanish. So I got 3 out of the 4 right? I got 3 out of the 4, but then what happened is I was so focused in those 5 years. After 5 years, I had been kind of exposed, and I was like, I think I like BC, right? I don't want to go to the feds. I like it here. And then things just kind of started happening to me. You know, I competed in the promotional process, but I was placed in spaces where I was given the insight, I was given the mentoring to kind of advance my career, not knowing it at that time, but, you know, because I'm always prayerful of what my assignments look like. Yeah. You know, don't place me in no foolishness, right? So I'm always prayerful. So anyway, now it's been almost 23 years. It'll be 23 years this year that I've been with MPD. I've been the district commander in August. It'll be 5 years. This is the district where I started my career after the academy. So it was great to kind of come full circle. And so that's just kind of it. And I am at participate. I don't think this was said, but I am also participating. I'm in the executive leaders program for the Naval Postgraduate School as well right now. I'm almost done with that. So
yeah, it's one of those things, you know, and yes, let's round of applause. You know, you all talked about all the things that you went through, and we are proud of all the things you've accomplished. But we know it wasn't easy. There were definitely some challenges, and we're going to get into that. I'm going to jump into one of the questions, and I see Your questions over here in the chat, continue to put them there. The ones that have come up so far, they definitely are going to be in my questions as I move forward. The film explores so many different themes around policing and being a woman in the profession. I think as women, we can all relate to some of the issues that arise in a profession dominated by males. And as Black women, there is an intersectionality that creates additional obstacles sometimes. Has this been your experience? Tell us how you deal with those issues and how it's been something positive as you have worked in our communities with our Black and Brown residents. I'll switch the order and go to Commander Kane and then go over to
Let me just make sure I understood the question. You said, how has it been being a Black woman, being a Black female officer? How has that, what kind of?
Yes, because it's, they talk about it in the film to a certain degree. Just being a woman has it in a male-dominated field, has its own obstacles. But there's another intersectionality that comes when you are a Black woman in a male-dominated field, particularly in a paramilitary organization like law enforcement. So, tell us about that and how that's affected your experience.
So let me say this. Let me start by saying that I am blessed because the police department that I chose, it had women and Black women that came before me, right, in some of these positions. So it wasn't that I could not look around this department and see women here wearing this uniform. When I watched this show or the movie, one of the things that she said, it's a couple things and I wrote them down, that she said that struck with me, because I remember very distinctly coming on this job and they said she put mother in it, but it was either you were going to be known as a bitch or a whore. I said, I'll take the bitch, right? And so for that, I have always just tried to let my work speak for itself. I've worked, I'm a worker, right? I'm going to come to work. I'm not going to get in no mess. How can we move this agency forward? How can we protect, the citizens? Like I've just been about the work. So you do have those spaces where you have to be very deliberate in what you say when you're using your voice, right? I have to think about what I'm going to say before I say it, because they're very small attention spans and we only get so much time at the table, especially, kind of coming up through the ranks. So the way that I've dealt with it is that I really do my job and I focus on the work, and I will draw lines. We're not doing any sexual harassment over here. You know what I mean? You're not touching me over here. Those types of things. So you have to establish what your presence is going to look like, right? And then you will be respected. I hate to say it like this, either you're going to be respected or disrespected based on that. And I've been very intentional, since I came to this job, since I got in law enforcement, that I just wasn't going to get caught up in any mess. And so with that, my work, I think, has spoken for itself and it's been recognized. And because of that, I have been given opportunities, or, now let me say, I know I work hard, you know what I mean? And I tried to put myself in a position so that I'm competitive for these opportunities. So I've been able to be exposed and have people take an interest and say, what, we probably should bring her along. So how do I deal with it? I do my work and I set those boundaries when it comes to my personal, space. And I'm very deliberate in what it is that I say. Because as women, we will be perceived as what? Whiny, bitchy, she's on her, whatever. So you got to be intentional in how you use your voice and what you do.
Yeah, and there is that phrase is used in the film, and I have to tell you, it hit me very hard because to the audience, I have heard that in multiple places across the country. So it's not that I heard that in one. So when I heard that from one woman, I was like, oh, okay. And then when I started hearing from multiple, I said, okay, this is an issue. These are the different personas, and that is something that we have to address. Chief, Tell us if there has been, your experience having been a woman and being a Black woman in your position, in the U.S. Capitol Police.
Yeah, so my experience here has been somewhat similar to Morgan's and maybe a lot different as well. So Capitol Police has been in existence since 1828. So when you did the bio and introduction, you said that Acting Chief Pittman is one of the first African-American female police captains promoted to that rank in 2012. So I'll just let that resonate from 1828 to 2012. And I am far from one of the first African-American women. I think they've probably had their first African-American woman start with the agency in 1973 or maybe 1971. But I can tell you that hindsight is 2020. So last week marked my 20th anniversary here. And I never thought, laughed when I heard Morgan say she had a 5-year plan, because I did too. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this for 5 years. I just really wanna, my son was an infant. I needed a job. I got my plan, I'm going back to school. And then I too was thinking about, okay, maybe I could do something else in law, still be public service, etc. But I can tell you one thing, Morgan State University laid a foundation for me that I had absolutely no idea was going to sustain me to this day. So there were professors like Dean Bernie Hollis, Dr. Gussie Hudson, and I mean, I could go on and on, that made me feel like when I was in the room, that if you were a Morgan State University grad, you were the baddest thing walking, the baddest thing talking. And when you went in that room, you had a command presence about yourself, because you knew that you were not only worthy, you deserved to have a seat at that table. It was expected and required of you to have a seat at that table. So when I came into the male-dominated profession, I was never intimidated, because I was standing on the shoulders of so many who have really bestowed upon me. I got a responsibility. I have a right to be here. I was always that sassy little girl. I had a lot of mouth, a lot of attitude. So I had to, like Morgan say, you got to be careful and mindful of what you say. I probably had to tone it down, because I have no problem expressing myself or checking you, putting you in your place. So then you go to, my next thing was mentorship, because I can tell you that coming through the ranks here, even when I have meetings today, there is no one at the table that looks like me. There is no one at the table communicating the way that I talk, that we can have a conversation by me just looking at you, because you understand me and I understand you. My look can tell you, oh, we're not doing that. But having mentors, joining organizations like Noble, I tell you, when I went to my first Noble conference, I think it was here in Washington, D.C., either in 2015 or 2016, I had not realized how long it had been that people had actually said hello to me at work. How many years it had been that people just don't even acknowledge your presence, that you exist. Sometimes when we're dealing with persons, particularly some white men, not all, but there's almost like you're invisible. Even when you're talking, it's like I don't hear, they hear you. Or other persons may hear you, but they may act like they don't. But going to that Noble conference, feeling the love, I then joined WIFL. I'm a member of IACP and a graduate of the FBI Academy, which all of my classmates, not all, but most of my classmates there were very welcoming. Large population of predominantly white men, but just a totally different environment where you felt welcome, you felt heard. But I really had to gain those mentors. I reached out to women at Metropolitan Police Department, Deirdre Porter. I believe she was a commander when she retired. When I took over discipline for Capitol Police, and I believe that was in 15, I reached out to other organizations. I tell the folks that are coming up the ranks here, you can't just limit yourself to what you see there. You never know where your help is going to come from, but when the help is not coming from within, you better go out and find it. And there are so many people that are willing and want to help you. You just have to make yourself open to the possibility and the opportunity and put that work in. And then lastly, I would say, today I went to a tabletop exercise. We have the joint session, State of the Union coming up. And once again, my right hand, my ace boon coon, as we used to say back in the day, pointed out to me at that table, and I don't know, maybe there were 30, 40 people there. Once again, you're the only African-American female. You're the only female at the table. And this is 2021, and I'm with my law enforcement partners, and we have to say, what do I want my agency to look like? Am I going to make a deliberate effort to have change? Because when young girls of color see themselves like they see themselves in Kamala, when they have that representation, they know that I can be it because I'm looking at it. And I hear someone that talks like me, she walks like me, she's got a little sass, she dresses like me. We just have a different vibe. And that perspective is so very much needed in law enforcement.
And you know what's interesting, and you don't see this yet in yourself, but you don't know there was the whole of the nation. Okay, when you were announced as acting chief, you became our family across the nation in so many different ways, supporting you, knowing that you were in a very difficult situation, and continue to be. And there's a question in here about how we can support you, and we're definitely going to get to that. This leads to my next question, which is, there is a certain, like you said, a look. There is a certain shared experience that brings something different to the table. I still remember my first time when the commissioner had me look at a video, and all of the police were like, that's the right tactic. That's tactic this, that's tactic that, that's tactic that. And they were like, Ganesha, what do you say? I said, the community's gonna tear you up. Tear you up. And you know, then I started being asked all the time, and it was not any police background that I had. It was my experience of my brother, my father, me. And so there's a part in this, in the film that I cannot watch without crying. And it's when Sergeant White stops the young black man and says, he says he doesn't have his license. And she says, that's why you're nervous. It's okay. I still can't talk about it, but that understanding, right? To just know that and acknowledge that. And we know that across the country in academies with no malfeasance, actually with good intentions for officer safety, what is taught is when you see those nervous actions, you see the furtive movements, it's not something to understand, it's something to get more on guard about and to say, maybe, oh, will you step out of the vehicle? And then what's going on in our head? Oh, we're really about to die. And then the behavior becomes even more nervous. even more. Your hands are shaking, all these things. And so why, even in that space where nobody means any malfeasance, it's an officer safety. The officers are taught, if you don't pay attention to that, you might die because somebody might be going for a gun or something like that. And so, you know, I think it really speaks to when you have a Black person who understands the experience and has the wherewithal to acknowledge it, because we all don't do that. It makes for a better interaction, a very peaceful interaction. Like she said, she doesn't want to add to the trauma of already being stopped. Has this been your experience where, you know, being a Black female has helped you, whether it's in your leadership, whether it's dealing with the community, and how do you balance those issues, the officer safety, you're doing your job, and then also, you know, what the experiences that we have, right, as Black folks in America. I'll come to you first, Commander Morgan.
Okay. So that part, wait, am I muted? Okay. That part in the movie, is so true, right? It's so true. When we talk about our lived experiences, right, and we bring that to the table. And one thing, you know, that I mentioned earlier when I said I'm intentional when I use my voice, what I should have also said is the further that I've went in my career, the more vocal I am, right? The more I see the need to recognize circumstances and situations just like what she went through, right? What she said, that's why you're nervous. I am a full-grown police officer, police commander, and when I see those lights behind me, I get nervous. So how we got to think about, what does the general public, you know, think when we're behind them and we're going to pull them over? If it's a police officer, and I work with police officers every day, I still get nervous. We got to be conscious of that, right? And so the conversation that I have, that's not something, to me, that's not something that should articulate or justify or give you the suspicion that you feel like you need to do what it is that needs to be done for public safety. But then again, we're reimagining what public safety looks like, right? It's not reform. We got to reimagine this thing, right? And we see it. And so those are the lived experiences that somehow in our training, we have to incorporate. Now, all police departments, all training, all hiring, they're not created equal. And I come from, you know, Washington, D.C., where I know that we get a lot of stuff right. We're on the leading edge of a lot of things, you know, in law enforcement, but there's so much more we can do, so much higher that we can take this. So when we talk about what that training looks like and what that exposure needs to look like, how do we get people that don't look like us to understand that? That I am scared to death just because you approached me in the uniform you have on and the demeanor that you're giving me, right? Because that really is true. And so I think the next step for us is to somehow, definitely the way we train and the considerations. And now this is a very dangerous job. It is, right? We have officers that get killed. I understand that. I want to go home to my 6-year-old son every night, right? I get that. But we have to start understanding and looking at people as humans, right? We can't look at one race as less threatening and this race is more threatening. Those are some of the honest discussions that we have to have. You know what I mean? You can't come to work with these biases and not understand or not be empathetic. Because I know as a Black woman, I have stood on the corner many a days to try to calm down, you know, a conversation where they, you know, F the police, F12, you just doing this, that, and the other. Like literally stood on the corners up in certain quarters by the Tyler House for like hours trying to talk to try to build that relationship, that understanding, because that's my cousin, right? That drunk man on the corner that you upset about, that's my Uncle Billy, right? You know, so those are the things, those are the experiences that as Black women, we bring to the table. Just that empathetic, we listen to our gut, we use our verbiage, our powers of persuasion. We don't want to go hands-on. We don't want to hurt people. We want to leave people better than the way we found them. And so those are like the training has to shift to that. It has to shift where that is kind of what we're focused on.
Yeah. And you know, Chief, your I believe, I don't know, your role maybe doesn't, you don't come into contact as much like on the street, or is this an issue that you have to address as well, whether it's, you know, personally or you know, in your role at the Capitol Police?
So no, I don't come into contact on the street as much as when I started out in the field many years ago, but I resonated with the trailer because first and foremost, I'm a mother of two Black sons. I have a 21-year-old and a 15-year-old, and I can assure you that when my 21-year-old started driving, and I'm sure we got some moms and dads on the call, that you know your heart just skips a beat. You're nervous. I'm like Morgan said, I still get nervous when I get stopped. And I'll give you a perfect example. So last week, I was in my government G-Ride, as we call them, on my way home on Branch Avenue. I'm on Branch, and a young African-American male runs into the back of my car. So I'm turning on my lights so that traffic will go around as a more safety measure. When I got out of the car, my head hit the wheel, get out, my neck, whatever. And the young man, who at first I couldn't tell his age, but he has his arms out of the window with his driver's license in his hands. And what I took that as is a motion to say, please don't shoot me. And it breaks my heart because that's not what I represent. That's not what I stand for. And when I walked up to his vehicle, the first thing I want to know is, are you okay? This stuff is fiberglass and metal. At the end of the day, if you're okay, I'm okay, a little shooken up, whatever. I saw my son in that car. I saw my son with his hands hanging out the driver's window. Don't shoot. That's what I could, and I could see the fear in his eyes. So all I want him to do is calm down. But I agree with Morgan 100%. It is going to take law enforcement to be change agents for law enforcement. Yeah. We are going to stop, we've got to stop being silent when we see things that we know in training, whether you went to training 10 years ago or 5 years ago, that is not the standard that we trained to. And I've given up too much of missing my kids' birthdays, my family, this and that, what I've dedicated my life to being this public servant, to allow someone to tarnish what we've all worked so hard for. I think the Department of Justice at some point has to establish national training standards. Yeah. Every little pocket and police department doing different things. We've got to establish national diversity standards. Just because your agency said they did diversity training does not mean that you all have any diversity training. The proof is in the pudding. When you start looking at human beings as if though that was your grandmother or that was your son, your sister, Morgan's Uncle Bill, when it's your family, people are calling you in crisis when sometimes the only thing they have left is their pride and their dignity. Yeah. Don't take that away from them too. Yeah. So I think once we commit to being change agents for this profession, we'll see it turn around, but we got to hold each other accountable.
We definitely do. And one of the things, and I wrote it down, and I was watching it at the beginning of the movie, and there were some things that sergeant said that I just think, because I think if you play around with the language, right, when we inside, some of that got to be checked, right? And you see how she changed after George Floyd. She said, I'm gonna use my voice.
Yeah.
Right. And that is what I have said, and that is what I say I'm going to do. I'm going to use my voice, and to the point of, you know, kind of with the training, what we got to look at is, just because we can do it, it might be legal, it might be within policy. Should we do it?
Yeah.
Right. We got to look at what we're doing prior to these uses of force.
Yep.
I'm a firm believer, and I think that we do this well in DC. And to the chief's point, I think there should be a federal standard, because we have some of these, like I said before, our agencies not trained the same, they're not hired the same, they're not supervised, managed, or, you know, accountable the same. So there has to be some standards that must be met, and must be meant, not just a check the box meant. It must be meant in, you know, met in practice and in carrying out what that looks like. And so I think that there is room there, even though something might be a justifiable use of force. Did we need to? Should we? What circumstances, you know, led us up? What tactics could we have trained or done better before we got into that use of force that would have kept us out of that use of force?
Yeah.
You know, we can talk about that kind of, a little, you know, as we go, because we have a use of force review board here that I sit on, and we're looking at what got you into that use of force, and could you have done something differently?
Exactly. And just a little PSA for everybody online. As you hear both of our panelists talking about national standards, there are 18,000
agencies
in the United States. There's some that have 3 people, there's some that have 3,000. And so all of the standards, even though many of them have to follow the constitutional standard, which I think a lot of advocates want to work on, which is, were you in fear of your life? Which can go a lot of different ways, but there's no standards. And so in the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which has passed the House, it is in the Senate, and they are fighting about it right now, mostly because of the qualified immunity that is in that bill. But there is the requirement for use of force standards, reporting out on uses of force. That's also a very big deal. A lot of agencies do not report out their use of force, whether it's to the community or up to the FBI. And so I just want to put some context on what they're saying, why there's all these differing standards. And so to any degree that you want to support that legislation, definitely reach out to your local legislators and let them know how you feel about that. So what I'm going to do right now, we're going to enter into the question and answer portion in our last 30 minutes. I'm going to turn it over to Danielle. She has a few folks on the line that may have some specific questions, and then I'm going to bring in some of the ones that are in the chat. So continue to put those there, and if we have time, then we will just allow you to raise your hand or speak out and ask your question. So Danielle, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Ganesha. And I just see the comments coming in on chat, on the phone, and as Ganesha organizes, as Ms. Martin, organizes the comments in the chat, I did want to turn to a few of the organizations and their leaders and have them weigh in. First, I want to turn to Mr. Tony Wilson and thank you and the gentleman of your Alpha chapter for joining us today. So Tony, can you ask your question?
Oh, okay, yes, thank you, and thank you for allowing us to be a part of this very important discussion. Question is, I understand that there'll be a national search for an actual chief for the U.S. Capitol Police, and wanted to find out what can we do to support Ms. Pittman in her quest to become the actual chief that's appointed in that position.
Great, thank you for that, Tony. Chief Pittman?
Thank you, Tony, for even asking the question. It just is humbling that all of this has been just a whirlwind experience, and that somebody would care enough to want to even help me. First and foremost, I would say, keep me in your prayers. Pray for me. I'm a firm believer that whatever God has for me is for me. Secondly, whatever member of Congress where you may be represented. I don't know if we primarily have local callers from Prince George's County, but if you're willing to write or call, email, whatever the case may be, to your representative to say, I am interested, I think I want to support her. This will be a first, historic, but not only that, Morgan said on the call earlier, I do my job and I know I'm professional. I know this place inside and out. So I think that when you're qualified, you're capable, and you know that the time is right, if that's something that you support, being a change agent, that's what I've always been. This is my passion now. I really love what I do, but I think that first and foremost, prayer. Secondly, wherever you're a constituent at for your representative, if you would make that known to them, that is always helpful. Thank you so much for the question.
Great, thank you. We want to go next to, I want to acknowledge Mr. Michael Taylor, who's the president of Omicron Lambda Alpha, and I understand he doesn't have a question at this time, but did want to acknowledge, oh, Michael?
I'm sorry, good evening. I'm sorry, I've been going back and forth. Good evening. It is a pleasure to be here. My name is Michael Taylor. Again, I am the interim president for Omicron Lambda Alpha. This is a very special topic for me because my father was a former police officer for DCPS, and I can definitely remember some of the stories that he would tell me just regarding the time he was there, in addition to how being a young Black police officer in the 1970s and 80s was really challenging. So I was wondering, just out the blue, for the police sergeants, what do you think what do you think will be the biggest obstacle for the community and police divisions to really connect? What do you think is the biggest obstacle out there?
So, what do I think the biggest obstacles? And I always talk from my perspective here in Washington, D.C., right? And I know that in the almost 23 years that I've been here, one of our huge focuses, has been engagement with the community and make sure that we're hearing and we're understanding and we're communicating with the community. Right. So that is like embedded in what it is that we do. That's like in one of our, guiding missions. That's why, we have the SROs in the school system. We work and collaborate with, Department of Parks and Recs. We're having, outreach events. It looks like every other week, where we're trying to engage with the community. Right. This last year, and with social media, it has been a humdinger. Let me say that. And I say that from the aspect of what erupted last year. It's a tipping point. We all watched, this was the first time I think where it was, with COVID and with, people being at home and how long the video was in the murder, of Mr. Floyd, the murder. And we watched that. This was something people could not turn their head away from, right? They could not turn their head away from it. They had to deal with it. They had to feel every one of those emotions that, that we all felt. And so there was a tipping point there for the community, and it became kind of adversarial, in communities where not necessarily we've had issues with engaging our community. So with everything that was going on, and being in the middle of a pandemic, right? We were in the middle of a pandemic where we couldn't really, all of that community engagement and outreach that we would normally do, we couldn't do it because we were in a health pandemic, and then we were kind of, a lot of us were detailed, down to, the protests and the riots and stuff. But that hampered, us to be able to, hug and hold the community normally the way that we would. But to your point, we recognize, law enforcement recognizes, and we, meaning, people and officers and executives that look like me, are embracing the fact that there needs to be change, right? And we are using our voice to call a spade, right? If something is wrong, it's wrong. And we're going to have to acknowledge it, deal with it, fix it, work on it, do all of those things. So as we look at how we're going to reimagine how the role that we serve in the communities, I can tell you, I don't know if any of you all have partook or participated in any of the calls, the forums that Chief Conti is having with the community. When he say he is on his listening session series, he is on his listening session series. We can't force down your throat what you want from us. We have to hear from you what you want from us, right? So that what we're working for, I mean, doggedly for, you know, is to make sure that we're hearing your voices, we're incorporating it in the way that we do business, and that we're partnering it, because we want you to trust us. You must trust us. We gotta work hard to make sure that you have faith, you know, in your local police department, and that we're gonna stand on the side of right, no matter who is involved in the circumstances or the situation.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And Commander Conti actually we grew up in the same neighborhood.
That's Chief Conti.
I'm sorry, Chief Conti.
That's Chief of Police.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
I don't want no problems from him.
You don't want no smoke.
Yes. We're moving on from potential smoke. And I did want to make mention that the Junior League of Prince George's County President, Mrs. Diana Emerson, is actually on the line with young people from her Junior Achievement High School program. So while she can't share her screen, she is teaching tonight. She doesn't have the permission from the students and their parents to engage on screen, but she did say that she's having her students write about this and wanted to share their perspectives on this. So we'll make sure that that gets to Ms. Martin and the other chiefs as well, if they would like. And last but certainly not least, I had been in touch with the GWAC president, Aaron. I don't know if Aaron is on the line right now or if there's some other members from GWAC, but GWAC is the Association of Black Women Attorneys as a part of the National Bar Association, and we know that they are absolutely partners in this cause as well. And I see some former GWAC members, including, oh, Renee, I'm sorry. Please, Renee, if you have a question, and I see also Beverly Fields, who is a member of this chapter and also an attorney as well. Renee, if you had a question that you wanted to pose, please go ahead.
Good evening, no question, but I'm the president-elect of the GWAC Bar Association. Just want to thank you all for this excellent program and for the opportunity to co-sponsor. Definitely learning a lot and look forward to using what we learned here today to move forward.
Thank you, Renee, and sorry about that. I was looking for Aaron's name. With that, I have addressed the questions from representatives of the organization. And Ganesha, as I turn it back to you, I did want to also acknowledge that you do have some of your Links chapter sisters who have joined the call this evening as well. So
fabulous. Well, we
yes.
we got to support each other in all the spaces that we show up. So I don't see you on here, but I feel you and I appreciate you being here to support me and our panelists. So I'm going to go to the questions. And some of them I will answer myself, and then some I will pass to the folks that I think are the best to answer it. So the first one I have here is a quote in the documentary was that there were no women on the executive team. Also, it was stated that police killings do not involve women. This is very interesting anecdotal data. How can we call for the police department to reconcile this with the overall engagement with police? So I'm going to answer this, and then if Commander or Chief wants to join in, you know, please do that. So the film said that generally, and the statistics show that women use force less, they shoot less, they problem solve more, they are sued less. But they definitely have shot, and we all had our hearts torn out of our chest when Mr. Wright was shot, and that was done by a woman police officer. And one of the things that, you know, we talk about as we talk about this film is we don't say that women do everything right. The question is if they use force less and they shoot less and they problem solve more, then why are we okay with just having 12% of women in police departments for the last 20 years and it has not increased? So let's go ahead and increase the women in policing and see if the expectations and the reforms that are happening from the community can happen by having more women at the helm. And so that's really the point. I will say, we put a link in the chat for a program that was just announced March 25th called 30 by 30. It is an initiative that was put out by NYU Policing Project. I am a part of that, and what it is it's gotten pledges from police departments across the country to say, I pledge and promise to make intentional efforts to bring more women into the ranks of policing. And while they're there, actually support them and not put them in administrative jobs and sideline them. And so if you're interested in that, please click that link. And that is a way. There were some questions, I think, on how to support women in policing. That's one of them. Before I move to the next question, was there anything that Commander or Chief wanted to say about that last question?
I think, and even watching, and I know that movies are edited, right? They're edited for whatever we're kind of putting out there. I was disappointed to see all of the women kind of pushed out of that rank, out of the ranks. And I don't know what the reasons were. I really don't, right? On what was going on within the agency, but it's clear that there's some issues in the agency. And having our voices and our experiences and our thoughts, because we are great multitaskers. We think 20 steps ahead of what a man is going to think. And I hate to say it like that, but we really do. Like, we're planners and we get it. We just get it. And so to not have those voices at the table, and there were two points in the movie that I was like, I don't think I could have took that. One was when the deputy chief was talking about Rodney King in that roll call or that training. I'm not sure what we were doing. But that was not a message that we want to send to any of our officers, right? And then when the young lady said, hey, can we get a seat at the table? And it was like a light bulb went off for the chief. Oh yeah, and then you can head it up. So they weren't even at the point where they were thinking that was such a thought that it just wasn't even registering with them that they had cut out all of the voices of the women, in that agency. And so that was just, we use force less because we trying to talk and compromise and, come on. We can just talk people into doing things, being compliant. We don't want to put our hands on you, but we will if we have to. And to the point, no, they did have female officer shootings that to this day we got some questions about. Right?
Absolutely, yeah. So one of the questions actually came from a couple of different people. I'm gonna combine a couple. So one of the questions is, considering the uphill battles for women in executive positions, what are some mentorship programs that are part of recruitment process and reaching out to Black women and in general? And there was also a question in here somewhere. The chief actually put some in there. Yes, her response was, we have some mentoring programs, but they need to be stronger. We need to branch out and expand. And I will agree with that. The mentorship programs now, I think in a lot of ways are in name only. And you have to be very intentional. And I'm not trying to give a pass to police departments, but I will say, as a paramilitary organization, most police departments are not good at lifting up voices and giving power across. It's either up or down. And so part of the 30 by 30 initiative is, here is how you support women. Here are some programs. Here are some policies. Let me tell you, at the Baltimore Police Department, we did simple stuff like we changed the policy so women could wear earrings and paint their fingernails like 5 years ago. Those were still issues. You couldn't have braids. Yes, I see your face, Cassandra. I'm very serious. This is the little stuff. This is the stuff where women, there are places in police departments right now that do not have women's bathrooms, because it was never even contemplated that women would be or in command offices. When you get promoted, it's only a urinal. So
yep. I'm telling you, I was on a panel yesterday. And some of the young women that reached out to me from different agencies, across the country, some of their feedback, they don't even have breastfeeding facilities or policies. They have a baby and there is no leave. There's no maternity leave. There's nothing to support them in that. So those are thoughts that we have when we're sitting at the table, right?
Commander, take it to another level. What I heard from someone the other day,
the vest. They just started getting female vests.
Yes.
We've worn male vests. So those are things that, and it's like you said, paramilitary, male dominated, where we have to get our voices at the table, and we must. And so when we talk about mentoring, right? And I don't think there's anywhere that probably really does it right, but we are those people, you know, that need to make sure that we're mentoring those young ladies coming behind us, and that we are standing for something or showing them something that they can aspire to do and be. And so I said, I'm going to do that. You know what I mean? And some of my female counterparts here in the agency, that's just something that we're going to do. And we have to be very intentional about it. We like, I'm on the phone, and I taught a promotional class before I got on here, and got a call back 3 of the young ladies that were in the class. And I just want to make sure that we all play our part in that, because it's just important.
One of the questions too along those lines is someone on here, I believe, said they were a high school teacher and they wanted to know, or they had maybe a daughter or something that was interested in law enforcement. Any pointers that we can give to them on how, I know there's cadet programs some places, explorer programs some places. Do you, either one of you all have programs like that where young women can get involved?
We do, and I wonder, did she say how old her daughter is?
I don't think that person.
No, we do. We have the cadet program. We have the junior cadet program in some of the schools. But more importantly, if she wants, and I've done this before, I'm sure Chief has probably done it too. When I meet, you know, moms and their daughters, you know, hey, I want to be a police officer, I say, come shadow me for a day. Just, you know, give them my assistant's number, and we can come in. You can come in, shadow me, and we kind of talk about what you want to do. Because I don't know what the age range is, what I can refer to. But we can kind of figure something out to get that exposure, right?
So if anybody wants that to happen, if you'll throw your email address in the chat, we will make sure to make sure that gets to the chief and the commander. So another question is, are there you know, policies and rules to protect police officers that call out other police officers wrongdoing? So there's like the duty to intervene. There's been a lot of conversations around duty to intervene.
Yeah.
So talk about that. And then also there was another question, I'm gonna combine it, where it asked, do officers have the right to arrest other officers when they see them doing something?
So we definitely teach. Chief, you want to take that one and then I can follow up?
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Okay, I thought you took it off me. Okay. So we definitely teach the duty to intervene, right? And what that looks like. And I can say that we are, at this point, I think we probably have made a decision. My chief, you know, said that he wanted to hire kind of a command staff person to focus like on mental health and looking at the policies that we need to change and making sure that we incorporate, you know, that overall concern into everything that we do in this agency, right? And part of that, with the duty to intervene, we have to make sure that and I think that what he's going to bring is kind of that. I think he's looking at a program where, you know, it kind of if something happens and they intervene, you know, with the discipline part of it and all that, but that's another topic, something we got to kind of iron out. But we impress that. I say that to say that we impress that, you know, on all of the officers, right? You have to, when you see one of your partners kind of, you know, they might not be in the right frame of mind when they came to work. Because remember, people do not call us to say, hey, how are you doing today? I just wanted to check in to make sure that you're okay. They call us because they can no longer control their circumstances or something traumatic has happened to them. This is what police officers do all day long when they come to work. And guess what they still have to deal with? Their home life, right? They still got to deal with all of the riots and all of those things. And so what is their outlet? So when we talk about the duty to intervene, It's important for the managers to know the workforce, kind of look and evaluate and see what is going on, you know, when they're coming to work, in roll call, hey, how you doing? How's everything at home? You know, and intervene in that manner too, right? Because we might need to refer them over to EAP, employee assistance or something. We might need to get them some help prior to. That's part of duty to intervene. So yes, if they see something going awry, they have a responsibility to tap that person out, right? Tap them out, I got it, you going on over there, right? And if there's some sort of misconduct, you know, something that needs to be reported, they are mandated, you know, by policy to report that to an official. And the other part of that is there's many different reasons. You know, our officers wear body-worn camera videos, right? And so if for whatever, we don't just look at them just to look at them to see if we can find misconduct. When we have a reason to go in and look, investigation, car crash, use of force, whatever that will be, because we do a lot of, you know, internal investigations on our officers here, just to kind of make sure things are in order. But and I have to get my officials thinking, right? If you see something that could possibly, you know, where an officer is on the edge and, you know, is straddling a policy or straddling, you know, treating somebody fairly or right or justly or within the Constitution, or even those situations that may be they could be lawfully doing it, but is it necessary? Then you have those conversations, pull them in, have them have a look-see, and let's talk about what we saw you do in this video and what other alternatives could have been. So I say all that to say that we have different ways to try to get at that, to make sure that we're trying to hold folks to a certain standard of acting and behaving.
Chief, did you have something on that one as well?
Yes, and just to piggyback off Morgan, we absolutely have a duty to intervene. We teach that in training. When I came through in training, one of the scenarios was centered around the Rodney King incident. And we have an officer that's using excessive force, but they wanted to test you to make sure if Pittman is standing there, what are you going to do to your officer, to your partner, to your, even if it's your supervisor, you have to intervene. This is misconduct, it's inappropriate behavior. As Morgan states, we all have policies that say the manner in which they are supposed to report that. And just going back to one of the previous things when we were talking about how we interact with communities, I can't stress it enough. It's going to take law enforcement officers to be those change agents. Morgan said something that's key. Every leadership training I've been to, Noble, Whipple, etc., highlights it. Officers at times have been trained to say what we can articulate. Ganesha, I know that you're very familiar. If you can articulate this, then you can do that. Sometimes we've got to change that narrative. Just because you can articulate it doesn't mean that that was the best course of action to take. There were other alternatives that we could have used or should have considered. So we have to put all of that and incorporate it into our training. And then I can tell you since January 6th to now, and Morgan thinks probably because it's 7:57, I forgot that I was going to tell a story about her, but I didn't forget. I don't forget anything. But since the 6th, losing 3 officers in 3 months back to back in the manner in which we have lost them is horrific. So I know firsthand the challenges of what it means to be a law enforcement officer, and it's not something that I take for granted or that the community should take for granted. We are put in extremely difficult positions and given sometimes split seconds to make decisions. But with that being said, it's important that we address that mental health component. We've had peer support on the ground here 24/7, since January 6th, because we know that we have employees that are dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. And then I think for the senior leadership, the persons that are responsible for making sure that their folks don't get out of line, they act according to the SOPs and directives, they have to have counseling too. At the end of the day, we are all human. We need to be able to deal with the workday, but also be a contributor to our families when we're going back home. So packaging that in policy to change how we do some of the processes that we have in place will really turn around the people, to me, that we have in our organizations. And going back to Miss Commander Kane, Morgan was here with me on the evening of January 6th. And I just want to share just a personal story, because I always like to do public acknowledgement and praise. She was here with me that night. MPD was instrumental in Capitol Police being able to get back to making sure that those electoral votes got counted so the democratic process could go on. So we're thankful to them. But on April 2nd, Commander Kane was also there for me. And for many of you on the call, that was my first press conference. And so Morgan and I are huddled up, and we know each other from before, but I was telling Chief Conti, and they probably could see some of the pain, the hurt that I'm feeling, but also there's a bit of apprehension, because now I got to go talk to media to say what's happened, and it's just a really bad day. And so Morgan pulled me to the side and she said, when they ask you this, you're going to say that. And when they tell you this, you're going to tell them. So it was that sister to sister, I got you. I don't know if anybody has seen some of the video or the footage from the pictures. Morgan is right behind me. But those moments like that are what is important to have, why it's important to have women in policing. Some of my male counterparts would not have even seen or understood. But those little things that she said, it was just saying, sis, I got you and you got this. And that meant the world to me at a time when nobody wants to be put on the world stage in those circumstances. But just knowing that you have support, that female bond, somebody that cared enough to say, this is what you do. And basically, we're not taking no stuff. So if they get out of line too, I got your back on that. So I just wanted to say I thought that would make her smile and make her laugh, but it was genuinely appreciated that day. And she knows exactly what I'm talking about.
You made me cry.
Oh.
But she went out there and I couldn't. And let me tell y'all, it was about 1 million cameras out there waiting on Chief Pittman to come out there and deliver heartbreaking news, right? Because I think that sometimes people forget how this affects officers, right? And I'm going to talk about an officer death. You know, any death affects us, but an officer death. And her being, the head of that agency, it's a different type of stress. It's a different type of hurt that lays on your shoulders. And she didn't even have time to you can't, ever break down on the scene, right? You got to go do that in the closet. So, but it was, for the chief to have to go in for, it was a lot of like national, international, multiple language, multiple languages represented. And she had to go out there and announce that her officer had been killed in the line of duty. And the way in which she handled herself when she went out there, I was so impressed. I was so proud. I was so, you know, even in those terrible circumstances, because she did well. She did well. She represented herself well. She represented women well, and she represented her agency well.
And let me
Well,
tell you,
Commander Kane had trained me right on the scene.
you know,
Yeah.
and yes, round of applause, snaps, virtual hugs, like all of that. And
yes,
I just have to tell you, this is why when God is ahead of your life, because I'm gonna tell you, I didn't know either one of these women before I got the panel. I did not know that story about them. I didn't know that they knew each other. But this all came together for a reason.
True.
And you all do so much. I know what that's your phone. I know hasn't stopped. An hour and a half of your time at any time of the day, even at midnight, is a lot to ask. And that was a beautiful way, I think, for us to end. And what I want to leave you all with is, we saw today the difficult job in front of us, and we live every day as Black and brown people with the state of America as it is right now. And we've got to change it. And I hope that what happens is, what we see that we want to support women and men in law enforcement like what we saw tonight. We want to uplift those characteristics. We want to uplift that accountability that they brought to the table and help get rid of the officers that tarnish the badge, to get rid of the ones who do not honor us as human beings. And so I hope what we take away from this is a activation, even more than what I know you showed up tonight. It is a Friday night. I didn't even realize we put this on Friday, by the way. Friday evening? Okay. All right. So the fact that you actually dedicated your time tonight to come means that you want to do something. And so we appreciate you. We appreciate your energy. We appreciate your love. We appreciate your support for the women on here. And all the work that you all do in your communities and your organizations. And we were just blessed to be together tonight, and may this energy that we felt, you know, move throughout our country. So I've already kept you over 5 minutes. I think the best way to make sure people come back is to actually end on time. So Danielle, I'll turn it over to you, or Courtney. I don't know if there's one last thing, but I'll end my portion for tonight, and thank you all so very much.
Wonderful. We will just close again thanking the organizations that have partnered with us. We are so proud to be the lead sponsor, and thank you, Ganesha, for approaching us to engage in this discussion. I don't think that you've approached another sorority for this discussion. And Officer Pittman, you are our sister, so we had to have you on here, but hopefully we'll have a time to celebrate you and support you in person in the future. And we could not be any more proud than how this went this evening. My chapter president, Courtney, if you will close us, and then we will let you all have the rest of your Friday evening. Thank you.
Yes, again, thank you to our panelists, our moderator, our co-sponsors, our event committee, our guests, all who serve Alpha Kappa Alpha. Thank you so much. And thank you for the next steps in terms of continuing this conversation. I saved the link, so definitely don't forget the policing project, the 3030 pledge. And, I definitely have some ideas for our connection committee in terms of ways that we can advocate for equitable environments for our female officers, and making sure that they are supported and comfortable at all times in the space. I'm so appreciative to everyone here this evening. Take care, be well, and this is not the end of the conversation. This will certainly continue. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.